Wars: The Clone Wars. I will admit that I've always been more of a casual fan of Star Wars thanks to my family. Not a huge one where I have to indulge myself with everything that has the name, like the TV shows, the games, the action figures, and all that kind of stuff. I just simply enjoy and really appreciate the original trilogy, a bit of Episode 3, and had a blast seeing The Force Awakens on the Thursday night of its premiere. That, and I have to add that I love the 2003 animated series. Not only one of the most underrated Star Wars piece, but even one of the most underrated works by Genndy Tartakovsky. Yeah, remember back in the day when he was making some great stuff on television instead of being a complete sellout making nothing but the same stupid Adam Sandler film over and over? Good times, good times. But when the franchise came in with their first animated feature and their first jump into computer animation, will the Force be strong with this one, or will I find its lack of quality disturbing? Let's find out. The story. The movie is set in between Episode 2 and Episode 3, when Anakin Skywalker has proven himself to be one of the best Jedis next to his mentor Obi-Wan. In terms of the Star Wars lore, this is meant to show an in-depth look into the relationship between the Republic and Jabba the Hutt. Other than that though, don't expect anything else that would resemble an actual story. In fact, the only driving force this movie has is this mission to save Jabba's son while stopping Count Dooku's army. The rest is nothing but an endless supply of action scenes, battles with big weapons, and lightsaber duels. This may sound awesome in theory, but trust me, it's not as exciting as it sounds. With the way they execute it, all those scenes make the film rather, well, boring. There's just no substance to the film. What makes the action great in the live-action films is that it has a movie in it. It gives us time to know the characters, what their purpose is, what the current situation is in the galaxy. You know, essential elements you need for a film, like a plot and believable characters. This one has none of those. It thinks that the Jabba mission is the story, and everything has to revolve around that for the ultimate goal to have Jabba agree to the Republic's treaty.
I agree, my friend, but what choice do we have? The Hutts control the Outer Rim, and we'll need their space lanes in order to move our troops.
Not to mention how it fails to explain why this is such an important operation that they have to make an entire movie out of it. Who cares if we need Jabba's trust? It's not gonna change that he'll still be one of the villains in Return of the Jedi. However, I will say that this is not all about the mission with Jabba and all the action in between. The movie does try to have this side plot with Anakin where he has to become a teacher to a young Padawan named Ahsoka, and the two form a friendship. You could easily tell though that this movie is far more interested in shooting guns and swinging lightsabers, that they handled this part of the plot very poorly. And I'll get to that one later because this is more of an issue with the characters. For a movie that's supposed to be in the Star Wars universe, it doesn't really have much of a story to tell. The animation. The Star Wars films have always been known to revolutionize the film industry with some of the most iconic visuals and effects in cinema history. So, with that said, what the fridge happened here? It looks like they dumped all the digital effects from the remastered version of the original trilogy into this one heaping mess of a computer-animated film. Starting off with the looks of the characters, the designs are meant to be an updated look from the 2D animated Clone Wars series, and they do not translate well into 3D. On top of the character animation being so stiff and feeling rather limited like it came out of a PlayStation 2 game, they all look more like toys than actual Star Wars characters. In fact, I was expecting in the middle of a lightsaber duel we would cut to Andy just playing with his new action figures. Now, I understand that it has a really cheap budget and this was meant to be like a pilot to the 2008 animated series. But considering that this movie was from 2008, this kind of animation is unacceptable, especially when it came out at the same time as WALL-E and Kung Fu Panda. On top of other elements like the background being rather bland with nothing that says we're in a Star Wars world, combine this all together and you get the ultimate reason why the action scenes don't work. because they're so poorly executed, it really takes away all the exhilaration and excitement you're supposed to get. Even in the prequels, at least they managed to get those scenes right, but because it looks so cheap, it no longer resembles Star Wars anymore. Yeah, they still have robots, the Force, and lightsabers, but we all know it's been done far better in other places. Maybe they could get away with this in something like Disney Infinity, but for an animated feature, especially one with the Star Wars name, there's no excuse. The characters. This will not be easy to talk about, since I've been given so little material to work with. Not because there are only a few characters here, they have a good supply, it's just that most of them are so bland. Many of them have no personality whatsoever, and that's because, like I said before, the movie wants to focus solely on the action and Jabba the Hutt. When you have characters like Captain Rex, Ventress, and Admiral Yularen and more, the only thing we know about them is which side they're on. Are they with the Republic, or are they on the dark side? Granted, there are some that do show a bit of personality and charisma, like Obi-Wan, Dooku, C-3PO, and more, but that has nothing to do with the writing of this film. They're already established characters from the movies, so anything good that came out of this written-wise would be because of George Lucas. Also, if I do have to give this film one credit, it would be in the voice acting. Some of the people in the movies like Christopher Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, Anthony Daniels, and more return to reprise their roles, but even the replacements like James Arnold Taylor and Tom Kane did a pretty solid work.
I was explaining the situation to Master Yoda.
Really?
If not ready for a Padawan, you are. Then perhaps, Obi-Wan, we can...
No, wait a minute.
However, you then get the case of Anakin and Ahsoka. It is true that it wouldn't necessarily be the movie's fault for Anakin, since he's already very generic in the prequels, but those two are in the category of just really bland and uninterestingly generic characters. You got one who is the Master Jedi, and the other is the smart aleck kid, and that's it. The movie tries to show how they've eventually grown to have a friendship, but all they do is just argue and then suddenly they bond because the script says so. Even if the actors did the best they could with what they got, it's hard to even consider them characters if they have absolutely nothing to offer. This is honestly the most dull and uninteresting project that ever came out in the Star Wars universe. Star Wars: The Clone Wars is hands down one of the worst films of the franchise, with barely a story, cheap-looking animation, a cast of forgettably bland characters, and some of the most boring action scenes that make the film feel much longer than it is. If there is one Star Wars film you have to skip, it's gotta be this one. If you do need your fix of animated Star Wars though, just stick to whatever came out on TV. Seriously, I'd rather watch the holiday special than going back to this. Sure, it's horrible, but at least there's never a dull moment in the Wookiee house. I never thought I'd say this about something Star Wars related, but this is just nothing but a waste of time. I better give this the AniMat's seal of garbage before I fall asleep. Hey guys, this is AniMat, and if I can be very honest about Star Wars: The Clone Wars, out of all the animated films that I had to sit and watch, well, technically not, I didn't necessarily do all of that, well, okay, I'll explain a bit later, but this is possibly, or hands down, one of the most boring animated features ever made. There's just nothing that really makes me want to sit and watch this from beginning to end. Like, absolutely nothing. The battle scenes are absolutely boring, and they take the grand majority of the film. The animation is just unappealing, so there really isn't anything really nice to watch, and the characters are just so dull. There's like, we don't know these characters, and they don't even bother to let us know who they are. Like, we only know about if they're good guys or bad guys, and pretty much that's it. And, you know, it really is kind of stupid to think that they have to make this entire feature film based on this mission to save Jabba the Hutt's son. I mean, really, that really is a plot that they should have saved for the TV show. And yes, I know, this is technically a pilot for the series that would eventually develop, but seriously, they should have just kept it to just that. They should have kept it to just television, you know? Make it like a 3-parter series premiere and make it just that. And I don't think a lot of people would be complaining about it as much as people are right now. In fact, you know, there is actually something very interesting to mention. While I was watching this, I was a lot more interested doing plenty of other things other than watching the movie. Like, I was just there like, oh, well, you know, in the meantime, since I am looking at this, or while this is on, I might as well go spruce up a bit here, you know, fix up a bit there. You know, I'd rather, like, you know, tidy up, like, whatever is around me, like, just fix up a few things, rather than actually watching the movie. And honestly, as a feature film, you failed to do that. And honestly, that would be the reason why I hate this film, is because, like, this is supposed to be Star Wars, this is supposed to be grand, this is supposed to be adventurous, but it ends up being so freaking boring. Like, I don't, like, this could actually be a big debate. Which one is a lot more of a waste of time, this film or episode 2? I don't know, but take your pick. But anyways, that is pretty much it with Star Wars Clone Wars, and it's time that we go and move on to the animation hat. And, by the way, if you guys would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put into the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Okay. Alright, now let's go into the next review, and hopefully we'll pick something that's a lot more interesting. And there we go. So, the next review shall be... Come on, and let this be an interesting one. And it most certainly is! Oh my god, it actually really is an interesting one. Well, you know what's actually interesting is that we are going through a pretty nice transition. Like, this is supposed to be a pilot for a TV series, but with the next one, we're kind of doing the opposite. This is a movie that's already based on a TV series that's already huge, and you cannot go bigger than this TV show.
I did that on purpose.